going to be continuation of the course INR 112, and we're going to be talking about lawmaking during the pre-colonial, all right, during the pre-colonial African state. With this being said, let's go straight into it. So we have an INR 112, and it's basically volume 4, INR 112, and we are making in pre-colonial Africa. Okay, now this is happens to be the fourth volume of the course, and I'm optimistic that in the next few classes we're having on the course, we should be calling it a wrap with INR 112, and we can progress to another course. Now, let's see what we have here. Speaking of lawmaking, this has to do with the legislature, all right? And the legislature in this era, okay, is dependent. The legislature during this era, the legislature lawmaking process during this era is limited to certain cultures, to certain communities. The law that binds this community might differ from the law that binds the member of the other community. Okay? And that's why I said it's limited to certain communities. Now, what constitutes the legislature varies from place to place with respect to nature of the society. The law making process varied according to what we call the nature of the society in question. Viewed according to the nature of the society in question. Now, the lawmaking bodies in these societies are considered according to the structure of the society. In this era, we had highly centralized societies and we have just decentralized society. We have Africa societies can be classified into one, highly centralized, and centralized society. Now, when we say centralized society or highly centralized society, what are we talking about? Under the highly centralized society, ensuring peace and order lies only on the shoulder of the monarch or the ruler. The ruler slash monarch bears the responsibility of governance. Okay? The ruler or monarch bears the responsibility of governance. That's why I wrote ROG so I can manage the space. While the centralized society, the responsibility of governance is what? Both on the ruler slash monarch and chiefs. Are we good? Here, it is assisted by chiefs and other bodies. But in the highly centralized, so this one now we can still categorize it as a little bit decentralized. But according to the material here, it says the lawmaking bodies is the centralized society that comprises of the paramount chief himself or chief in councils. Alright? So it's paramount chiefs, also known as a monarch, or chief in councils, which are oligarchy, government of the few. Alright? So it's not a one-man thing anymore. So we have the paramount chief, and we have chief in council. Now the paramount chief here is said to be the monarchy. Okay, and here we have oligarchy. So we have now in some highly centralized societies, it was the paramount ruler alone who ruled. Like I said, highly centralized society, only one person who rules without resource to any of his subjects. This was, however, a rare case. Alright, so it was more of the centralized society than the highly centralized society. So we have that as that. Now let's take this. Now speaking of the highly centralized, we have the likes of the Islamized part of Africa and in the Dahomey kingdom. Alright, and on the other hand, the king in council made laws in order to help certain advisory, just like we have in Oyomesi, whereby the Alaafin is assisted by his chiefs, the Oyomesis, whereby we have the Ààrẹ Ọ̀nà Kakanfò like a general, we have the likes of his chief in council that assist and advise him on how to go about his governance. So we have that as that. Just like we have it here, the king discussed issues of concern with the chief in councils and solicits their what? Candid views. He solicits their candid views. Okay? He solicits their candid views and opinion. Alright? Although he was not bound to accept their perspective. Now, the lawmaking cabinet could comprise village chiefs. Alright? Village chiefs. Law making cabinets. We have village chiefs. Law-making cabinets. We have village chiefs. Okay, comprises of village chiefs, though in charge of other province under overall control of the king. The king is known as the ultimate ruler, but is assisted by what we call the lawmaking cabinets, which are the village chiefs. A very good example of that is Oyomesi. So now the highly centralized, we have the light of some Islamized states and that of Dahomey, all right? Dahomey Kingdom. Dahomey is spelled Dahomey. Dahomey and Islamized part of Africa, highly centralized. So we have Oyomesi, it's a good example of just decentralized that is assisted by his chief in councils. Like we have it here, it says the Oyo Empire had the Alaafin who made declaration either alone, all right, declarations either alone or in consultation with his Oyomesi, the king makers. Okay, so we have that as that. Now the various king makers held different positions of specialty and could offer advice to Alaafin. Speaking of these king makers, they could offer advice to Alaafin respect to their area of specialization. Just like we have ministers these days, and we have ministers who are in charge of education, anything that has to do with education in the country, those ministers are called to book that of electricity, that of works, that of housing, that of international relations. All these ministers are there and they are specialized in their portfolios. So we have that as that. Also, we have that in other like provinces now are headed by Bales, which are village heads. Permit me to raise the board. So we have provinces, all right, province. Let's just read province, right? Province. Headed by what we call Bales. Which are otherwise known as village heads. Otherwise known as village heads or clan heads. Now in Ghana, the story was different. There was the Ashanti as the paramount ruler. Right? You know, this analogy is that of the Oyo Empire, that is a little bit not as centralized as the Ashantis that has only the paramount ruler, all right, of the Akan Federation. All right. So we have Ashanti, right? Ashanti, Hene, okay? The paramount ruler. Okay, that's a paramount ruler of what we call Akan Federation. Akan Federation, alright, in Ghana. So we have that as that. Now, so we have that as that. We talked about the centralized and a little bit less. We talked about the centralized and the highly centralized. All these are under the legislative arm. All right. So now we also have the executive arm. Laws made, written or unwritten, without sanctions. So we also have, when we say executive now, they are responsible for the implementations. So we also have bodies during the pre-colonial era, bodies that sanctions, that put into implementation laws that have been made. Just like we have here, that executive laws made, written or written without sanction or instrument, machinery or enforcement is as good as not existent. The role of the executive in pre-colonial Africa was not what? Clear cut. So we also have the executive role of the executive in the pre-colonial Africa, all right, not a clear cut, unlike what we have now, that everybody knows where they belong to, their responsibility, and what they fall under. So we have, it was due to fact that there was nothing like separation of power in most cases. All right, unlike now that we have it written in the constitution and everything, in the pre-colonial Africa, it was not clearly stated. That's why this conflict resulted. It wasn't clearly stated that, okay, this also or this also level is responsible for the implementation there and there. So sometimes you see another portfolio intruding into the work of another portfolio, and sometimes conflict results from this. Now we have that as that. Let's proceed. So we have what we call the lawmaking bodies existed, so as the executive as well. Now, this was due to the fact that there was nothing like the separation of law in most cases. Now, the same personnel handled the process of lawmaking and execution. You see what I'm saying? The same personnel handles lawmaking and also handles execution in the person of the paramount ruler. Okay, we have a case of the paramount ruler, which is the highly centralized system. He's one making the law, he's one executing it. He's not reporting to anybody. He's just a one-man administration. This is the case of the highly centralized system. So we have that as that. Now, there was also what we call delegated executive power, which were given to some chiefs and provincial heads to ensure and enforce adherence to common rules of the land. Some cult groups also performs what we call law enforcement roles of the land. Such included the Ogboni in the Yoruba kingdom, and then Ekpen in Igbo kingdom, among others. So, this basically is also categorized into two. We can consider this under the highly centralized and the centralized. Now, executive power under highly centralized is done by the same man who is making the law, and there will be conflicts definitely. But in the centralized system, whereby we have the king relying or getting advice from his cabinets, with that, there's what we call delegated authority. Now, authority is being delegated to the chief in councils. Authority is being delegated to the baales, which are the village heads, so they can act in accordance All right, they can act in the stead of the king himself. That authority has been delegated to them. So with that, it is a little bit easier for the system to work smoothly. So we have that as that. Also, we have the judiciary. Okay, judiciary as well, since there was no clear separation of office and personnel in most places, the paramount ruler reacted as the adjudicator. Now, speaking of this in the same light, that's the judiciary. In the same light, the judiciary, we are talking about, all right, the interpretation of the law, all right, interpretation in the case of highly centralized and centralized, all right, still the paramount ruler here, all right, but here the ruler and his council, all right, just like that, nothing more, nothing less. So we also have under this, we have the court of law was legally constituted under political leadership. The purpose of the judicial system was to settle disputes and administer justice. Now you can imagine in the highly centralized, the paramount ruler is still the one that is responsible for, all right, settling these disputes, unlike the ruler and his council, whereby they can have a court and have someone be in charge of that. All right, so we have, as it says here, that the purpose of the judicial system was to what? Settle disputes and administer justice. In the Ashanti Kingdom, the court system was a hierarchical, specifically 3 levels. All right, according to the Ashanti Kingdom, 3 levels of hierarchy in the judicial system. There was the lowest level, which is let's take that. So we have Ashanti, Kingdom, 3 levels. Okay, we have the lowest level of Odikuro. The lowest level was Odikuro, village head, comprises of the village head, okay. We have also the Ohine, all right, the Ohine, and the Odiko's court was subjected to the Ohine, which is the divisional chief. So we have divisional chiefs. Okay, this court, Odikuro court, is subjected to Ohihe. All right, is subjected to Ohiene court, which is made up of divisional chiefs. Okay, and lastly we have the Omahine. The Omahine. Here we have the paramount chief. So that's how it goes. And here, Ohine's court is subjected to Oma, just like we have the different states, Court of Appeal, high level, all this Supreme Court, All right, all these costs put into consideration. It's the same strategy we have here. And on this note, we'll call it a wrap for today. And in our next class, we'll talk about checks and balances in this era. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. I believe you have been able to gain a thing or two into this class. Please let's do well to submit our notes to our private quarters. And if you are yet to become a member of the private class, you are missing out a lot. There is a lot going on, and there are going to be a lot of resources that will be attached as a benefit for being a members. As well, TMA support is also made available for every our members of the private class, as we all get it at the best discounted rate. Thank you very much, everyone. You can always reach out to me on www.tutor.com. Have anything that is in line that is in view of the National University of Nigeria. Thank you very much. I look forward to see you on the next lecture. Have a wonderful evening. Bye.